everybody, and welcome. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and here we are at the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. It's great to see you this beautiful morning. Let's stand up and we'll sing together our congregational song, which is found in your program. And we relax our bodies, we relax our minds. We allow ourselves to be still and know as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
The body is like Mary, and each of us has a Jesus inside. Who is not in labor, holy labor? Every creature is. See the value of true art when the earth or a soul is in the mood to create beauty. For the witness might then for a moment know beyond any doubt God is really there within, so innocently drawing life from us with her umbilical universe, though also needing to be born. Yes, God also needs to be born. Birth from a loving hand's touch, birth from a song breathing life into this world. The body is like Mary, and each of us has a Christ within. By Rumi.
And so knowing that there is God within us waiting to be born by the touch of a gentle hand, by a song, let us sing together and allow that creation to occur as we go deeper in consciousness, as we raise our consciousness and simultaneously go deeper to rest, to trust, and to remember the I Am presence. And together we sense the shared presence of God within each of us. The power, the life, the universe, that unnameable force that is God, that lives in us. And let us open our eyes to see that beautiful power and presence in everything as we breathe in deeply. And then exhale, opening our eyes, loving what is, as it is, and so it is.
The first song the choir is going to sing today has a very rich text, and we thought it might be a very nice idea to have a recitation of that text before we sing it. So we're inviting Hugh to come up here and recite it.
Let's see if I can get through this one. In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow, in the bleak midwinter long ago. Our God, heaven cannot hold him, nor earth sustain. Heaven and earth shall flee away when he comes to reign. In the bleak midwinter, a stable place sufficed, the Lord God Almighty, Jesus Christ. Enough for him whom cherubim worship night and day, a breast full of milk and a manger full of hay. Enough for him whom angels fall down before, the ox and ass and camel which adore. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet what I can, I give him. Give my heart.
Thank you, choir. Thank you. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Todd, so much. And thank you, band. Love all of you. So, in this holiday season, because I am, as I've shared with you many times before, I am a Budeo-Christian, Hindu, Sufi religious scientist. And I suspect that some of you are too, as well, if you can say it, and if you can write it on medical forms and such. The name of my service, or my message today, is What Would Rumi Do? Were any of you raised in a Christian church where they had those little WWJD bracelets? What would Jesus do? I'm going with what would Rumi do? And when I came up with this idea to do this talk, it was Wednesday. I have to get a title to Annette by Wednesday so she can do the advertising for it and the printed work. And I thought, wow, yeah, that's going to be a great idea. And then Friday came, and it was time to write my talk, and I was like, I don't know what Rumi would do. I don't think he'd watch television, but that's what I really want to do right now. So I called my prayer partner, and we prayed, and prayer is so wonderful. Prayer just offers us such a blissful change in perspective. In fact, I think that is really the purpose of prayer, is just to change our perspective and to change our thinking. And so I prayed, and I opened my eyes, and there was the Christmas tree, and there was the beautiful outdoors. Was it raining on Friday? I can't remember. It was raining last week, and it was beautiful, whatever it was. And the dogs were around, and the house was warm, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I think I'm getting an idea what Rumi would do. But I still asked a few people what Rumi would do. What would Rumi do? And most of the people, when I asked, what would Rumi do? I asked for one word. Most of them would say, whirl, right? Because Rumi was a whirling dervish. Okay. And then, again, because of the power of prayer, I remembered that I had read this week in one of the classes that I'm teaching a passage from Mark Nepo, who wrote that Rumi whirled to release himself from the habits of his conditioned mind, from the habitual thinking of the world, that Rumi whirled to get beneath the surface of things. And when he got beneath the surface of things, he wrote the most incredibly beautiful poetry, and his loving scribes wrote it down for him. That's what Rumi would do. And I think that Rumi must have been having a really, really, really good day, the day that he whirled and he wrote that poem that Hugh read at the beginning of the service. The body is like Mary, and each of us with the Jesus within us, waiting to give birth to the Christ consciousness within us. You know, When I think about that poem, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just think about that is so wise for a Sufi to come up with that image that the body is like Mary. Not only our body is like Mary, waiting to give birth to the Christ consciousness, right? Because when we say Christ in the center, when we say Jesus in the center, we're speaking about something bigger than just the man that lived 2,000 years ago. We're speaking about the Christ consciousness, which is the consciousness of knowing our oneness with God. And knowing that there is this beautiful power of wholeness that contains all opposites that seem irreconcilable, that contains and embraces all paradox. So it's not only us that are giving birth to that, but when he says the body is like Mary, the body also refers to the entire manifest universe. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the Word made flesh. It is the incarnation of the miracle. It is God in form because spirit and matter are not separate. Spirit is matter, and matter is spirit. And so when you think about the entire universe as the body being like Mary, waiting to give birth to the Christ within us, that means that everything has the capacity to reveal the Christ to us, to reveal that wholeness to us, to reveal the oneness and love of God that is embedded in absolutely everything. And then Rumi, because he is so brilliant, he writes, I have to read this part because I love it so much, God is really there within, so innocently drawing life from us with her umbilical universe, though also needing to be born. Yes, God also needs to be born. I may just cry through this whole service. I don't know why. I'm in a place today. But that's such a beautiful image. You know what that brings to mind to me is God giving birth to us, or are we giving birth to God? The answer to that question is yes. God is giving birth to us as we are giving birth to God. Is that just amazing or what? Is that incredible? How do you wrap your head around that? No wonder the poor guy had to whirl, you know? So here's a simpler way of saying what I think Rumi would do. What would Rumi do? Rumi would spin his mind past the illusion of separation. He would spin like a drill into the heart of the matter, the heart of all substance. And in that place, below the surface appearance of reality, Rumi would reveal the poetry, the mystical poetry that is embedded in all of life. That's all. That's all we're called to do. So there are many, many ways to do this, but I came up with a couple of ways that I'd like to share with you today. Some ways to look for the poetry of life that's embedded in life, where we may have missed it in the past. The first is the poetry in the plain. And by plain, I mean ordinary. When I studied with Rachel Remen about a month ago, the author of this book that we're featuring this month, My Grandfather's Blessings, which was written by Rachel Remen, who is the granddaughter of an Orthodox rabbi. When I took a course with her last month, she asked us to think about our work and to describe a time when we were really inspired in our work. This was a workshop about deepening in our purpose. And I went with the first thing that came to me. You would think that in my role that a lot of the inspiration would come, say, at my ordination, or when I do a really good talk and everybody stands up and claps, or when we have great music. But my inspiration came from a chicken. We've been having farm animals on stage at our Christmas Eve service every year now for probably since 2007, 2008 or so. And around 2011, 2008, or 10, what comes after 11? 2012 or so, we'd always gone for the large farm animals, a horse, a couple of donkeys, a llama. we decided to go for some poultry as well. Does poultry refer to the chicken that you actually eat? Okay. Anyway, we decided to go for some smaller creatures. So we invited a turkey, Bernard, and a duck, Rachel, and a chicken named Garden Buddy, because Garden Buddy was very helpful in the garden. And Garden Buddy's owner was actually a young boy who was probably about 7 or 8. And so we did the rehearsal. We told him where he was going to stand with his chicken, right up there, so everybody could see him. And Garden Buddy and his handler were going to be first in the door. Now, there is a tradition in weddings with bridesmaids and brides and people walking down the aisle for Christmas Eve and other pageants, is that we always tell them to walk really slowly. But do they? No. They are all of a sudden the center of attention, and you should see how many bridesmaids I've seen loping down that aisle like gazelles, trying to get to the stage before anybody sees them. Well, the same thing was true with Garden Buddy and his handler. Garden Buddy didn't actually walk. He was carried down the aisle, but the choir started singing this beautiful song at the finale of the Christmas pageant, and Becky Burnham, our stage manager, gave Garden Buddy and his handler the cue to come through those doors and stand on stage, and he just jogged down this aisle, stood up here on the stage, held his chicken. The chicken was wearing a red hat. And he stood there for probably about a good 3 minutes while the rest of the animals were coming in. Just a boy and a chicken and a beautiful choir. And it touched me so deeply to see the innocence of that moment. To see that boy with his love of this chicken, that he had loved him so much that he put a little red hat on him. For God so loved his chicken that he clad him in a red hat. And I felt the congregation in this sort of collective gasp of awe. And it was all something that was so ordinary. This chicken, you can get them at Vaughn's for $5 on Friday. Sorry, Garden Buddy. Hope you didn't hear that. But that's revealing the poetry in the ordinary. Rachel Remen talks about, or in her seminar rather, she told a story about when she was doing another seminar with doctors. She works a lot with medical professionals, doctors and nurses, and this was a seminar that was all doctors. And at the end, like many of our classes, when you take a class in our center, we torture the students at the end by forcing them to do a final project, which is really fun for them and for us. But she asked them to do a final project as well. And one of the doctors, who was very resistant to the whole process, her final project was she brought in a stethoscope for all of the 20 or so doctors that were there. And she said, "We spend so much time listening to other people's hearts. I want you to listen to your own heart for 7 full minutes." And so they did. They put the stethoscope in their ears. They listened to their hearts. And at first they're all like diagnosing, is this, do I have a murmur? What's going on? Is that tricuspid valve working like it used to? But then they calmed down and they started to really listen to this faithful, ordinary heartbeat that just beats and goes and loves and circulates. And by the end of the 7 minutes, many of them were crying. Is that so beautiful? And this beautiful thing that we have within us that just beats without ceasing, that is such a reflection of the nature of the universe that just keeps giving and giving and giving and giving. And of course, some of us, if you're like me, you always try and look for the loophole. And you say, yeah, sometimes the heartbeat stops. What about that? Oh, just stop that. Just stop looking for loopholes. No, but what I would say to that would be that this physical heartbeat might stop, but the heartbeat of the universe never stops. When this heartbeat stops, we just step into a larger heartbeat that embraces us, that holds us, that supports us, that surrounds us, that loves us, because there is only love. And so we reveal the poetry in our own heartbeat. One way to practice this at home is to just look at the ordinary things around you. I tried this last night when I was sitting in bed with the dogs and working on my message for today, and I just said, okay, I'm just going to close my eyes, and I'm going to just open my eyes and find the poetry in the first thing that I see. I opened my eyes, and I saw the doorknob to the bedroom door. I'm like, oh, great. How am I going to find the poetry in that? That's just so ordinary and so plain. But I sat in the meditation of it for just a moment, and it brought me to remember the people that we bought our house from. This couple that were in their late 80s, early 90s. They had lived in the house. They had lived in the house from, I thought that might be Garden Buddy up there protesting. But they had lived in the house since the 40s, basically. And the man had been an agriculture teacher at the Santa Paula High School. And they had lived there and raised 2 children there in this tiny little house that we live in. And I thought about all of the hands that had touched that doorknob, turning the handle. Mommy, Daddy, I had a nightmare. Can I come in? And all of the beautiful memories that are just embedded in every fiber of that house. So you see the effect of this? You see that I'm crying over a doorknob right now? That's what Rumi would do. Rumi looks for the poetry embedded in the ordinary. Rumi, I think, would also look for the poetry immersed in the imperfection. In this book, Rachel Remen tells a story about this doctor that came to see her. She counsels mainly people that are dying now, but this was a story about a chief resident at one of the major hospitals in the Bay Area that called her up and said, we have a problem doctor. He is not cutting it. His attitude is terrible. Do you want to take him on as a client? She said, sure, why not? Her rationale was she was so used to working with people that were sick and dying that she thought it might be fun to work with someone who just had a bad attitude for no good reason. But anyway, she took this guy on. He was not happy about being her client. He thought it was ridiculous. He thought he was fine. He thought the problem was with everybody out there, the chief resident, and he spent most of his sessions with her talking about how bad it was, how terrible it was that they had to work 80-hour weeks. The young residents had to work 80-hour weeks, and they were paid hardly anything. And they were so tired that he could see the stress in people, and they were so sometimes unkind to their little pediatric patients and forgetting things. And he just complained and complained and complained about how bad it was. And she said to him, maybe it is bad, but is there another way that we can be with this? He said, no, that's ridiculous, and he left. And he came back and he said, this isn't working. This is my last time with you because this just isn't working. She said, well, okay, you're here and it's paid for. So why don't we just see what we can do with this last time, and this will be our last time. And finally he agreed. So she asked him to go into a meditation and just think about his work and see if any image surfaced. And he did. He went within, and first was, eyes shut, mouth going, this is ridiculous, saying that it wasn't working. And then all of a sudden he said, oh, wait a minute, I do see something. There's this man, he's dressed all in white. And Rachel said, well, is it a doctor? And he said, no, it's a man, and he's wearing a robe, and his hands are outstretched. She said, well, what do you feel about him? He said, well, he's just not doing anything. He's just standing there. He's not doing anything. This is stupid. He's just standing there. He's not going to help me. He's just so stupid. She said, well, just stay with the image. And then he saw in his mind's eye a bird land on this outstretched hand of this image that he had in his mind. And then he got it. It was St. Francis that had come to him. And he opened his eyes and he started to cry. This hardened doctor that thought he was so right about everything, that thought he was so justified in his resentment and his anger, he started to cry. And Rachel asked him, where are the footprints of St. Francis in your life? This didn't come up just out of the blue. There is a pattern to this. There is a pattern embedded in your life. And this gentleman talked about how when he was young, he read several books about St. Francis, and he owned the DVD of Brother Sun, Sister Moon, which is one of the canticles written by St. Francis. And he said when he was a young boy, he actually thought about being a veterinarian because people would always bring him birds with broken wings or animals that were in trouble, and he really loved to try and help them. And Rachel asked him, what does this have to do with your work now as a pediatrician? He was a pediatrician. And he said, well, I guess there's something within me that longs to protect innocent life. And Rachel's response was, that's why you're so cranky. That's why you're so cranky, because there is something greater within you that wants to emerge, and you're busy blaming everything out there instead of recognizing and zeroing in on the reasons you are here in the first place. Sometimes our vision and our hope and our desire and our goodness is just too big for the circumstances that we find ourselves in. If you're struggling with something, if you're struggling with a personality thing that you're calling a flaw, or something that you're thinking is wrong with you, perhaps meditate on it and see that maybe it is not necessarily what is wrong with you. It is something that is leading you to what is right with you. That was his last session. He went back to his residency, and Rachel always wondered what happened to him. And then a few years later, that same hospital called her and said, we've got another problem doctor for you. And she said, well, what happened to the last one you sent me? The guy on the other end of the phone said, you would not believe this. He turned out to be one of the most amazing doctors ever. He was an inspiration to so many people. That's why we're sending you this other person, so you can fix her too. And Rachel said, you know, I didn't really fix that other guy. Why? Because he wasn't broken. So we look for the poetry in the imperfect, because it is there. This last one is the hardest one to talk about, and that is, do we have the courage and the strength and the grace to reveal the poetry in pain? From this book again, My Grandfather's Blessings, this story has a happy ending, but it doesn't have a happy beginning. It starts out with Rachel as a young intern in the emergency room of another major hospital, probably Columbia in New York, where she worked originally, I believe. And she's there with all of the other residents and the chief resident, and suddenly the doors burst open, and a man and his wife holding a baby come in, and the baby is very sick. And so they bring the baby into the emergency room, and everybody's working on the baby quickly, trying to make sure that he's well, and the baby is not doing well. They diagnose that he's got extreme dehydration, and his heart stops. And so they take the defibrillators and they shock him, and then they shock him again, and they shock him 4 times that his heart doesn't start up. And the resident just throws down the defibrillators and he says, gotta go tell the parents. And all of the doctors leave the room except for Rachel and 3 nurses. And Rachel said, not knowing any better, because she was naive and young and new at this, she said, can't we just try one more time? And she picked up the defibrillators and held them to the baby's chest and pressed the button. And normal sinus rhythm came on. The baby his heart started beating again on the EKG machine. As soon as that happened, the doors flung open and the stricken parents came in, followed by the resident who looked so sad and so beside himself with having to give that news to the parents. And they realized that the parents didn't know that the baby was okay, that the baby was alive. And Rachel picked up the baby, and the nurses picked up the IV bags and pushed the monitors, the EKG monitors, and brought them to the mother, where she took the baby in her arms. And that is poetry in pain. And again, I know that there are people here, perhaps even here today, that have lost children, that are dealing with unspeakable loss, the loss of parents, the loss of pets, the loss of other loved ones, the loss of siblings. And in that story, it worked. There was a happy ending, but what if there isn't a happy ending? And I think it's the same thing as the heartbeat. Can we trust in this mystical universe where nothing is lost, where everything is the umbilical universe of God, where everything is expressing her glory and her grace and her wonder and her love? Can we acknowledge, can we trust that even those who cross over the threshold are met with loving arms, and that it is a homecoming just on a larger and even more magnificent scale than what I just described? I trust it, and I choose to find the poetry in the pain. One other aspect of the poetry in the pain that I'd like to share with you, it's actually two aspects, and that is compassion, and that is service. How many of us felt compassion for those parents? How many of us felt compassion for those that we know who are suffering? How many of us feel compassion for people that are all the way on the other side of the globe that are suffering? That's part of the poetry of pain, and that it awakens something beautiful in us, something rich, something mystical, something powerful. And then we serve that compassion. We all have many purposes in life. We may want to express joy or express love or express peace. But I believe that the overarching purpose of life is service. That we use our gifts, that we use our power, that we use our talent, that we use our love to serve life with our best selves, with our consciousness, with our willingness to whirl into the depth below the surface. And we serve life not because it is broken, but because it is holy. Days pass and years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. But now, in this moment, we, clay, touched by God, can breathe into this place and recognize that this place, that this planet, that this center, that this beautiful service, that all of you sitting here in these chairs, we are filled with awe and wonder. We are beautiful. We are the poetry of life in motion and in service. Can we know that for ourselves? Can we know that for the world? Can we know that for one another? I think we can. So what did we just do? We did what Rumi would do. We spun below the surface of things that sometimes catch us. Things like the plain, the ordinary, the imperfection, and the pain. And we went beneath, and we revealed the beautiful poetry of God giving birth to itself, embedded in everything. Let's have some more of that. Let us pray. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Whew. So let's take a moment just to be with where we are, as we are. Trusting that whatever is revealing itself to us is perfect in its own way, even if it seems imperfect. We trust that there is a larger presence, that there is a larger power, that there is a larger grace that infuses us and surrounds us and lifts us up. And this presence we call life, we call love, we call God. And it is giving birth to us as we give birth to it. Let us breathe into that awareness of our oneness with God, of our power, of our presence, of our knowing, of our humility, of this mystery that has named us and called us and chosen us to be. And in this place of being called and chosen, let us also choose. Let us choose to serve life with all of the grace and all of the compassion and all of the love that we know that is within us. Let us choose to look past the ordinary into the mystery. Let us choose to see past imperfection into that which is beautiful. And let us choose to see past the pain into compassion and love and grace and the glorious, gorgeous mystery that enfolds all of it, because it is all part of God. I am so grateful to know this truth, so grateful to speak these words, so grateful to know that lives have been deepened and sweetened through this spiritual work together, and that we take this intention and we use it to help the world. A world that is not broken, but that a world that is holy, and we use it to reveal ever-expanding ideas of holiness within this glorious, glorious creation. I bless this spiritual center and every single person in it. I bless all paths to God, churches, temples, mosques, and ashrams. I bless atheists and fundamentalists. I bless everyone, for everyone is a blessing. And with a heart that is so filled with gratitude and so filled with blessing, I say, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and I release these words into the mystery, and together we say, and so it is. I am held in Spirit's holiness, divinely guided by wisdom, courage, and love. I am always connected. I seek God in everything. I create joy on earth as I share my blessings. Thank you for my life. And so it is.